Welcome everyone to today's webinar where we are going to more specifically talk about our electronic payment solution for NetSuite. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to jot those down into our Q&A chat box. Two members of our team joined me today, and they will help me at the end of the presentation to address those for you. So let's start a little bit of introduction. So I will be your host for the next 30 minutes or so. My name is Carol Darcy. I'm a Senior Manager and Solution Specialist here at Nolan. And a little bit more about Nolan. We've been a NetSuite solution provider since 2006, so very involved in the NetSuite community, both as implementation consultants and as well as developer of NetSuite Suite app, and the one we're going to talk about, as mentioned, is electronic payments today. Also a 5-star award reward that we recently won for our engagement with the NetSuite community. From a location standpoint, we have a head office in the United Kingdom, and in the US here, an office in Boulder, Colorado. However, most of our staff was already working remotely, and even more so with our recent situation. So we're very comfortable implementing and supporting our solution remotely. So let's talk a little bit more about electronic payments, which is a solution that can help you pay electronically suppliers and employee expenses directly within NetSuite, being a NetSuite Suite app. So when we jump into our demonstration here in a few minutes, you'll see that I will be inside of my NetSuite environment with a bundle that is very easily installed, and we'll add that additional center tab to your environment for electronic processing of payments. Why you would consider Nolan Business Solutions electronic payments? If you want to keep full control and complete audit trail of your payment process inside of NetSuite, that would your payment manager you might be looking at out there. A lot of solutions will be will manage payments, but outside of the NetSuite environment, effectively doing a little bit of data synchronization between NetSuite and their environment for processing their your payments. Sometimes the challenge associated with that could be delays in getting those payments processed through the bank. Having a module inside of NetSuite and keeping full control of that payment process allows you to generate your files yourself inside of NetSuite and working directly with your bank in getting those payments processed. So usually eliminating a lot of time delay from that standpoint. We also support multiple payment methods. We've been able to work with numerous bank and various file format requirements to be able to support not only domestic ACH and wires, but also be able to help with virtual checks, which is becoming more and more of a requirements with our current situation. So versus instead of in-house printing of checks, if you have a desire to hire a check printing service or have your bank coordinate that for you, those are the types of files that we can also generate with our solution. And virtual cards is also becoming a more and more popular payment method that we can also support an electronic payment file format for. Want to highlight another big differentiator of working with our solution is our team. Over the years, we've developed an unmatched expertise around international payments. So not only do we have the tool that allows for the required format internationally, but we have had a lot of experience working with, again, numerous banks worldwide, and we can help you navigate the complexity of generating worldwide international payments. From a functionality standpoint as well, we have some enhanced functionality to not only effectively initiate your payment process, but also incorporate a bill payment approval, email remittance to your vendors, and also have an incorporated payment cancellation process also. So we're going to do a quick demonstration here today that will essentially walk us through the following process. So it really starts at with the vendor card. We need to capture the vendor bank details on the NetSuite vendor record. We're going to have an additional tab where we can capture all that information. Your vendor bills can continue being entered any way you're doing today. So should you have a vendor bill approval process or whatever you need to do to enter vendor bills in NetSuite, perhaps even integrating them from external systems, those are all scenarios that we can support. The idea really is that once a vendor bill is entered in the system, approved and open for payment, then we can move on to the next, really initiate the payment process in the Nolan module. So we're going to go on our pay bills by EP window, where a list of available invoices for payment will be displayed, allowing us to do a little bit of selection. And then once we've selected the invoices we want to pay, we're going to generate our actual bank file to the NetSuite file cabinet. That file needs to find its way to the bank. We have a couple options there. There's always, the good old download the file manually and upload it to your bank portal. We also have some bank integration options that I will highlight after our demonstration. Last but not least, once the payment file is processed by the bank, there's usually some kind of confirmation report confirming the processing of those payments. So back into NetSuite, you have the ability to email remittances directly to your vendors for all those successful payments. So let's go through that process together in NetSuite. So you should be viewing my NetSuite environment. I'm going to start with the first step. So we're going to talk a little bit about the vendor card. So we have, as an example for our demo scenario here, a number of vendors in our system, and they are paid via a combined bank payment definition or file format, sort of a term that I use interchangeably. What I'm demonstrating here is the ability, not only can we generate file formats for multiple payment methods, i.e. ACH versus wire versus checks, depending on the bank and their file format requirements, we have an opportunity sometimes to even combine the various payment methods into one file format, allowing you to essentially create your payment bank files for all your vendors, regardless of the payment method that they need to be associated with. So this is kind of the example we're going to work through today, where we're going to be paying a number of vendors, regardless of them being paid via domestic ACH, wires, or checks, or virtual card. International payments, depending on the country we're going to, will tend to have their own very specific requirements, which will often call for different file formats. So in some environment, we will have multiple bank payment definitions created depending on your need. We're going to be focusing our attention on segue communication as part of our demo scenario here. So the segue has a couple open invoices that we want to pay. So let's start by viewing what the vendor record would look like. So upon installing our bundle, an additional tab you might have noticed labeled Electronic Payments is added to your environment, which is essentially where, I didn't mean to do that, where all the electronic payment functions are, where the file format definitions are done, where we're going to actually process the payments, and where we're going to have these post functions that we can complete afterwards. So back to our list of vendors here. And we're going to take a look at segue communication. So Nolan EP comes with its own set of custom records that are being tracked into a separate tab on the vendor record. Should you already be using perhaps the native EP in NetSuite and tracking some banking detail information in there, would like to transition to our tool, we have a way to migrate that information from the native NetSuite fields onto our own fields for processing. So that's something we can help you during implementation do as well. And essentially the bank payment tab here will get built based on the actual fields that are required depending on your needs. So sometimes it's going to be a very simple tab that will essentially just turn a vendor on and off for electronic payment through the Nolan process. A confirmation of the file format or the payment method that we want to use for this vendor would be selected here. We have some approval capabilities. So if you would like to introduce an approval process for the vendor bank details, that is something that can be turned on in our configuration. And essentially the rest of this tab here will typically be built depending on what kind of bank detail we need to capture. So that will be directly driven by the different payment methods that you might have. So sometimes we're going to see subsections where some generic payment detail information like bank account name and currency would be tracked, remittance email for the post payment process, and then whatever bank detail we might require depending on where the payment is going. So when you're looking at straight, ACH NACHA, you perhaps have a very simple section where the NACHA bank account information will be captured. If we are talking about international electronic payments, is where sometimes we will start building a little bit more complex bank details section to be able to capture country that we're paying, country codes, and various additional elements that are usually associated with international payments. The other example here that we can see is perhaps we need to capture check type information. So should there be a need to capture delivery type and associated delivery codes, those are all things that we can build into the form so that it is, from a user standpoint, intuitive to enter the data. So here's an example where specifically this is would be a check delivery list associated with Wells Fargo. We would see that there are various check delivery methods that are available. Should we be choosing just a US mail vendor, we automatically do things like defaulting the appropriate code that needs to show up in the file. So that really, from an end user standpoint, is very easy to determine what we want to do with this vendor, and then have all the appropriate information available to be sourced in our payment file later. All right. So once we've captured the vendor bank detail, those essentially become defaults for that vendor. So when we're actually entering the bills, as I mentioned before, we don't interfere with that process really, because all the bills are inherently going to get that information or track that information from the defaults on the setup on the vendor record. So if we look at a bill payment that is open for payment here, that we're going to pay here in a moment, you can see how the bill is capturing whatever electronic payment we need to capture at the bill level, including the fact that it should be paid by electronic payment. And we also track things like the file format, which represents the payment method associated with it. And the reason why we trickle down some of that information at the bill level is to also give you the flexibility for one bill only to decide on a different payment method. So for whatever reason, maybe at the vendor record level, you're paying using ACH, but for whatever reason, this bill is super urgent, needs to go out as a wire. Then at the bill level, you have the ability to make that decision and those changes. But for all intents and purposes, if we're just following the default process associated with the vendor, then your bills are automatically capturing the information it needs to capture. So let's go ahead and demonstrate a payment process. So the payment process is initiated from the transaction submenu, pay bills by EP. Here's our pay bills by EP window, where we're going to have the opportunity to use or define selection criteria to display the proper list of invoices we want to pay at the bottom of the screen here. So it really all starts with selecting the bank account that we want to pay money out of. Should you be in a one world environment and have to take into consideration subsidiaries, that would typically be the first drop down here. You would pick the subsidiary you want to pay, you want to process a payment run for, then which bank account. So we're going to go ahead with our Wells Fargo bank account in this case. Now for that bank account, should you have a setup that includes multiple file formats, some organization will, even though there might be an opportunity to combine multiple payment methods into a format for payment processes and the way that the team is built, sometimes we'll still want separate file formats. So this is essentially why the drop down here could have multiple file format selection out of. In our case, we're really looking at a combo. But that's where I could select ACH or check or wires if I've got separate file formats to go for. So in this case, we're going to go with our combo file formats. So what happens now is ABR just EP just went through the process of looking at all invoices that were associated with this file format. And for anything that is due for payment as of the selected end date of today, in this case, will show up the list of bills that we can select for payment. So those are kind of so this is the basic selection. We got a couple basic selection criteria to show us invoices that are due as of today for a simple selection process. Should you require additional filtering capability, we can build in some filtering around your department, class, and location at the GL level. Sometimes we leverage the accounts payable GL account to also help segregate the open bill population. Start and end date obviously would help you manage which bill do you want to pay based on payment due date. So those two dates are in relationship to a bill payment due date. So again, as of today, we're paying all of our bills that are due. Now, this is more for when you're looking at doing a payment run with multiple vendors. As I expressed before, if there is an urgent need for a one-time payment, you always have the ability to come and call out one vendor here to do a quick processing of a payment. The middle section is just building my payment batch. So we're going to have the payment date associated with it, and then we're going to have an amount, an account that will start populating as we select invoices. So once the invoices are displayed, we try to display kind of the what we feel is the important information about the bill. Should you have a need to review a bill in more detail, it can always drill back to the bill form itself to see a little bit more detail. We will display the original amount and the amount due should there be a difference there. So now we just go through the process of mark all, unmark all, or select individual invoices for payment. We're going to make sure we pick our segue. Couple segue invoices here, best by payment ID or dates or whatever might be relevant to help you in your selection process. And you have the ability to do partial payments as well. So should you choose that you just want to pay half of this invoice or almost half, you always have the ability to do those partial payments by changing the amount to be paid here. So once we've made that selection, we can go ahead and process payments, which we can see the amount in account has been modified accordingly. So that gives you a little bit of an idea from a cash flow perspective, how much you're about to process. If there is a requirement for additional submission reference to be included in the file, that's available. We can print vendor vouchers right then and there, but that's not really a feature that is used as often anymore, as everything's done electronically, obviously. Right now, the bills are going to be consolidated into one payment. So we've got multiple bills for one vendor. They're going to be aggregated into one payment. Should you have a need to have a one-to-one relationship, bill to payment, you can do that with the little flag that we have here. So let's go ahead and process payment. So now if you remember from the slide deck, now that we're processing the payment, what is happening is not only are we creating a bill payment inside of NetSuite that will be associated to the select with each of the selected invoices, we're also generating the file, the payment instruction file that will be shared with the bank. So right now we're in the process of, we're already on the second step of generating the file. So the bill payments have been created. We're going to give that a moment here. So we can see that 5 payment records have been processed based on my selection. So if we want to review what the bill payments look like, I'll give you an opportunity to do that quickly here. So we got 5 bill payments that were generated. We can see, we're going to sort a little bit on a different, somebody's been in here processing payments in the future. Let's go down to the 19th here. So those are the bills that we just generated today. So we got a number of bills that were generated, And actually, we're talking about these 5 here. So we got our segue communication that we're going to go back to. So we're going to view that bill payment. And we can see that the bill payment has been created. So our process will create the bill payment in NetSuite. And it will also apply the 2 selected invoices. And then you're going to have some electronic payment information that is also being captured for audit trail purposes back to our pay by EP in the file format. But more importantly, we're tracking a very important piece of information here that we call our EP audit reference. That is the unique payment number that we assign to every single payment we process. It is a combination of the file name followed by a payment sequence inside of that file. So a couple of reasons why we do it this way. This now gives you an opportunity through this number, first of all, to replicate this number in your check number field if you'd like. And when it comes time to do bank reconciliation, you'll have an opportunity to consolidate these payments back to the batch level for an easier reconcile to your bank statement. For those of you that do not want to capture in the check number, but would rather continue with the NetSuite sequence, that's also available. But ultimately, this EP audit reference remains on the record as that unique identifier that can be, that makes it easier to trace back with the bank and also when discussing with your vendor possibly. Now the file was generated to the file cabinet. I can either download it right from here if I'm into a more of a manual download, upload type process. So here's just to give you an appreciation of an XML file. So we support XML file, delimited files as well. XML is becoming more and more the standard though, so we have a lot of templates we can work with on that. So we'll just basically, the implementation is about doing this configuration in your system so that when we generate the file, we have the proper structure that the bank will be able to process your payments with. In the case of an XML file, we'll have a little bit of a header. We typically have the originating party information, so that would be you and your banking information. Then vendor information, both bank details and invoice information should we be doing remittances, like check remittances as an example. The file is located in the file cabinet. I believe I opened the file cabinet. So there's a predefined location in the file cabinet where all the files are being generated into. So that's always ultimately where you can also come and download the file. And that is also where we can create a direct bank integration to this file folder to automate the file transmission from here directly to your bank server. And I will explore that on the slide here in a minute. So now that we have our bank file, we send it to the bank, will be processed and confirmed successful, hopefully. If not, there is the ability to delete payments within a file. So it doesn't have to be a complete delete of the whole file, but individual payment that might not have been processed for whatever reason, maybe a vendor changed their banking detail on you, didn't tell you. You have the ability now, once it's identified as unsuccessful, to select your payment batch and individually delete vendor payments if needed. But more importantly, 99% of the time, our payments are successful after a successful implementation. So the next post-payment process, logical post-payment process would be to potentially email electronic remittances to your vendors. So again, we do this at the payment run or payment file level, where a payment file can be brought onto our email remittance window here. Every payment in that file will be displayed with a confirmation of the email address captured on the vendor record. If there is a need to change that, we can change that on the vendor record itself. But basically, we're ready here. I'm going to send myself a bunch of emails. So when we click on email, what we're doing is sending an email for the message can be determined by you in our configuration setting, and we attach to the email the actual payment voucher in NetSuite. So we just simply attach a very simple NetSuite payment voucher form that you can easily modify to meet your own vendor needs. So here's email remittance is complete. So I'll show you what that looks like by going back to that bill payment for Segway Communication. If I refresh this record, the nice thing about doing the email remittances inside of here, I often get asked is, well, why would I do that? The bank is actually offering to do this for me. The disadvantage of that is you will not have any audit trail of that communication, versus doing it yourself inside a NetSuite will allow you to capture at the bill payment level that communication to your vendor. So you initiate the communication, you track it inside of NetSuite, and then should a vendor call you back, request some information about a specific payment voucher, then it's that much easier to relate to what they're looking at. So here's what the payment voucher could look like, but as I mentioned, these are not custom forms in any way, shape, or form. They're really just your preferred NetSuite payment voucher form that you can customize as you see fit. All right, so that essentially completes the process. If we kind of just refresh our memory, here is kind of what we followed here. Let's talk about some enhanced features that are available with our offering as well. So far we've talked about a one-step EP process, where when we process payments, we're effectively doing two tasks, two things. We're creating the bill payment inside of NetSuite, and at the same time generating the bank file. We have an additional module that we call Bill Payment Approval, or BPA, that introduces an intermediate step in between here, allowing an organization to approve the generated bill payments before they are released into the bank file itself. So that's essentially what I call our three-step EP process. So we generate the bill payment into an unapproved status. Then appropriate users have the ability to go and approve or reject bill payments. And upon approving the bill payments, then back to the accounting team, we can actually generate the bank file to only incorporate those approved payments. So a couple screenshots to give you an appreciation of that module, of that extension as well. So, you know, we work through creating that approval route list with you that can have multiple levels based on amounts. We can have one or multiple approvers at each level also. So we essentially walk through and help you build that approval route appropriately for your organization. Once that is in place, certain users are going to have specific authorization to run through this process. So they'll have the ability to go to our approve, reject bill payment screen, select the bank account they want to approve payments for. This will display our list of unapproved bill payments, so generated but unapproved bill payments, where they can make a final decision, payment decision. Bill payments can be approved. If rejected, then we're essentially just deleting that bill payment and reopening the invoices for payment. Once the bill payments are approved, move to approved status, then they are available into the generate bank file window, the third step, where they can be selected and processed for payment and bank file generation. Let's talk about a little bit about bank integration. So whichever way we get to our bank file into our file cabinet, it needs to find its way to your bank for payment processing. As I mentioned before, the basic functionality will always allow you to manually export or download that file from the file cabinet and upload to your bank. Some people want to remove that manual intervention and have been requesting a more automated integration between NetSuite and your bank's server. So the option available to you here is once the file is located in the file cabinet, we have a number of clients working with an integration partner that see an automated file transmission between that NetSuite file cabinet directly to the bank through an SFTP server connection. So it's a secured file transmission between the two environments that needs to be initiated by an integration partner that has a tool to facilitate that communication. If some integration partners, big names you might have heard out there, if you're already working with them, should be able to facilitate that for you, would be a Del Boomi or a Celigo. We have a strategic relationship with a partner ourselves called Tierra Consulting that essentially specialize in bank integrations between NetSuite and the various banks out there. So should you not have already an integration partner you want to work with, we always can bring them to the table. And you might also have the own internal expertise to do this. So that's something you might want to explore with your NetSuite IT admin team to see if they have the expertise to facilitate an SFTP transfer between NetSuite and your bank. So takeaways from our session today. If you use Nolan Electronic Payment, you essentially retain full control of your payment process inside of NetSuite compared to some of these external payment manager products out there. We support and have a very specific expertise around international payments, but we support both domestic ACH, wires, checks, virtual cards, and as I said, just the Nolan expertise here is really around international payments. We can really help you. That can get pretty complex to implement a worldwide international payment scenario or various scenarios. A lot of countries have very specific requirements, so that is definitely something that we have experience with and can help you navigate if you have those international payment requirements. We have some enhanced features when we compare to native EP as well. So if you're looking for bill payment approval, automated email remittance, and payment cancellation process, Nolan Electronic Payment would be a good fit. Should you want more information or schedule a more specific product demo so we can review your needs in more detail, you can visit our website or contact our US sales team at the email address and phone number on the screen. And at this time, I would like to open it for a question and answer period.
Hey, hi, Carol. Derek here.
Hello. Yep.
You have a question?
Okay.
If a client doesn't already have vendor bank details, is there a feature for mass requests to vendors to capture their bank details?
Can certainly give you guidelines on what information you need to gather from your vendors, but there is no direct platform or sort of extension available to sort of, I think what you're referring to is maybe just being able to call out to your vendors for them to enter the information that would then automatically be synced into NetSuite. So that's something that we currently don't have an automated feature for. So it's a bit of an external process that we can help you with during the implementation.
Perfect. Thanks, Carol. No other questions as of yet, but we can give it a couple seconds here. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for your time today and participating in our session. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you want some additional information or a more thorough product demo based on your specific needs.